The ModernJeeper Show, the show about Jeeps, Jeeping, and Jeepers.
Well, hey, Modern Jeepers is another episode of the ModernJeeper Show with me, Matson from Metalcloak, and Mr. Modern Jeeper, Corey Osborne.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, yourself?
I am good. I'm good. Of course, we got Rockstar Jeep girl Jessy. How you doing, girl?
Hey, Matson.
So, where are you guys at? Because I'm in my house right now, as you can see. Cool kids map there. But where are you at?
We're in Las Vegas, Nevada.
What are you doing down there?
Nothing.
Not a thing. It's the most boringest place ever.
Right. You're going to be there through New Year's?
We are. Yeah. We just needed to get away from Colorado for a bit. It was snowing when we left there yesterday, and this morning we had about 5 inches of snow on the ground, and it was time to go.
On top of the other snow, on top of the other snow, on top of the other snow.
Yeah.
Well, see, we've got our guests hanging out here and listening to this, but I'm curious. I'm actually, before I even introduce these guys, I want to know, of all of you, who has done New Year's in Vegas?
Oh, yeah.
Larry, of
There
course.
yeah.
Rick, no.
Of course.
Andrew.
It is interesting that in this pandemic that we're in and what we have going on, the flight out of Denver to Vegas was packed. I mean, the airport was
you flew?
full. We did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You flew?
Yeah.
You
couldn't drive.
Going,
roads were horrible.
You risked going into this tube of an airplane in this COVID era.
Yep.
Right. Nice.
Yep.
Well, I guess for you, it's probably good considering the rest of your life is just driving.
Right.
Well, and things are really cheap. I can fly here cheaper than I can drive here.
Wow. Well, cool. It's Metalcloak save some gas money, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So, this is episode number 98. We only got 2 more episodes, so we hit the magic 100.
That's
so it's very poignant that we're doing it as another one of our roundtable sessions. So, would you care, Corey, to introduce our guests?
Absolutely. This is kind of a recap. Well, not really a recap. It'll be a recap of the year, but 3 again icons in the industry that we've had on at the beginning of 2020. We had them on I think it was the first week in January.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Larry McRae, who's actually joining us from out in Johnson Valley. Imagine that. Who would have guessed that he'd be out in Johnson Valley right now?
It's beautiful too. Beautiful.
I'll bet. And we've got a good signal from him, so that's kind of cool. We've got a good buddy of mine, Rick Pewe, who's joining us. I'm not sure where Rick's actually at right now. But
his tag says $Arizona. So
$Arizona. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's incognito.
And we've got our buddy, Mr. Andrew Hoit from Milestar joining us. And we're going to kind of take a look back at what 2020 was all about after we talked about what 2019 had brought us and what the vision of this year was, and see how close we came.
Right. Well, this is definitely a recap. Now, I have to say that Larry, I think, is officially the most common guest we've had on the ModernJeeper Show. I think you've been on was it 4 or 5 times now? Well, it's your own. We did the episode just about you. Then you did the 2 this is the second roundtable of the year, and then you did the 2 COVID roundtables. So that's awesome. We have this is what we call a friend of ModernJeeper, Mr. Larry McRae.
Hey, when you're retired, you're always available, I guess. So.
Right. Go to the man who will say yes, especially when it's last minute. Oh, I have an idea. Hey, Larry. Well, this is great. Now, we all had a chance to listen to last year's episode, because I did have to go back through it, because one of our fans specifically pointed out that they went and listened to that and they thought, oh my God, how poignant and how prescient that episode was for what we ended up running into in 2020, which definitely was not what we intended it to be at all. Corey, want to take it away?
Sure. I've got a couple of pages of notes here that I took from that podcast, and it was very interesting to me because I think it has to do with each of our guests having some insight into this crazy industry that we get to work and play in. But at the beginning of this year, we all kind of started out thinking that, the economy, everything was so dependent on the economy, and we were all kind of feeling like there may be something coming, but we just weren't sure what or when. We had no idea at the time that we would be under some kind of a pandemic and this virus thing would take over our entire world for the last 10 months. And that podcast ended up being a lot about the Gladiator. And it's kind of interesting how this last 10 months has kind of rolled out. From my perspective in the off-road industry, it's been a very good year because people are still working on a lot of projects, and it kind of gave them time to refocus on a lot of their things. So I'm just going to kind of, I don't know, we can just kind of bat this around for a little bit and kind of talk about did 2020's, how do I want to say it? Now that we're through it, good, bad, or indifferent, what were your thoughts just roughly about this last 10 months? Let's start with Larry.
Totally unpredictable, of course. What I thought was going to happen this year to what happened this year was totally different. And once the pandemic was announced, I thought that we were basically, the tour business was out of business. Nobody's going to travel when there's a pandemic in the air. So the fact that it ended so much differently than what we thought was a blessing, I guess, just like it was for a lot of people in the off-road industry. The best place to get away from people is out in the middle of nowhere, and that's kind of what we all specialize in. So it actually was a boost for, I'm guessing, just about everybody here's business. And we do a lot with the Park Service and with BLM, and their predictions for next year are not a whole lot different than what they were for this year during the pandemic. So we're kind of gearing up for more of the same. In other words, a lot of domestic travel, a lot of people visiting national parks and remote areas. So I think that's good for everybody on this podcast, and probably most of the listeners, I would guess.
Rick, what about you? I mean, you've kind of, at the beginning of the year, we talked a whole bunch about what Jeep was doing from a marketing perspective, the digital media push, where things were going. The magazines had just gotten shuttered. What's your perspective looking back a little bit?
Looking back, it was really shocking to see how things started out so well in January and then quickly dove off the deep end with the pandemic. One of the reasons being all of the manufacturers immediately had to change all of their plans. Easter Jeep Safari was canceled. Jeep, of course, couldn't even have their people fly on a plane. And at that point, I was working with Jeep since I had retired from Discovery, 10, etc. So I was no longer in the magazine business. And I had expected maybe a month, maybe 2 months, that things would slow down. But then everything cut off. Nothing was happening. It just like off the deep end. And I was not expecting that, especially since starting up with Gone-Gpn.com, the company was going to be relying on going to events, reporting on events, that sort of thing. All of a sudden, there's no events. So we had to quickly change gears a little bit. And since it's all Jeep all the time, we're doing things like starting a podcast, of course, and just showing people the Jeep lifestyle that everybody still does. And that's what was mentioned. People are still going out and doing things. Larry's business has got to be booming because they want to get away. So I'm hoping that things change not only in the OE side, because look, they came out with the Bronco, right? Let's see how it goes. I think it's going to take a year since the inception, but by next summer things are going to be booming. For me, it's going to be a lot better.
Andrew, what do you think about the way we ended up?
Ended up as far as what, Corey? At the end of the year. I mean, this has been a roller coaster to say the least. And I don't think it's come to an end. I think we're still we've got a bumpy, interesting road ahead of us. But I think it's been, to Larry's point, it's been good for us. It's been good for me. It's good for the industry, just because everybody saw that lull that Rick talked about in the March, April, May timeframe. But when it started to lift again in May, it skyrocketed and demand went through the roof, stronger than we've ever seen it before. And it stayed strong. And everybody's trying to get, outdoors. Nobody wants to be cooped up and locked up and staying away from people. And it's the camping in several industries are just exploding. Camping, fishing, everybody's sold out. They can't keep up with manufacturing or production. And it's similar with, rooftop tents, off-road accessories, you name it. Companies are selling out of their product as quick as they can build them.
Right. I think that's one of the major problems, is that the supply chain is suffering so badly that people can't get what they need to have the product to sell to the enthusiast that wants to go out and do things.
So, one of the things that strikes me is people are without of work. They're losing their jobs. They're losing their small businesses. The restaurants and the travel, the tourism industry is struggling. And yet we're still we're all still busy, and people are still spending money. You can't find a UTV. You can't find a camper because they're selling them as fast as they can bring them out. It's an interesting perspective when we're dealing with folks that may or may not have, they're worried about how to pay their bills, and yet we're dealing with people who can't spend their money fast enough.
Yeah, it's definitely such a good point, Corey. I've been in the industries that got suffered. Before joining Metalcloak, and we talked about this before, I was in events. I did beer festivals and music festivals and all that. Thankfully, Metalcloak came along, and I'm no longer in that industry. But God, all my friends that are in that industry, they just all got shut down. None of them could do. Sacramento was having a beer festival every weekend. Literally, there's so many breweries in the area, and the breweries are doing fine. They've found ways to get around it and do great events. And they're always packed. There's always something going on. But the festivals and the events and the outdoor events and the music, all that stuff is gone. So I know people who have suffered under these conditions. But what's interesting is they're still out there trying to live their life. And it may be that we found that we had so much extraneous money being spent on fruitless things, or not say fruitless, maybe just that buying that candy bar in the aisle because it's right there in front of you. We start thinking differently about how we're spending our money. And in this case, people are spending money on our industry, as you said, Andrew, and camping and anything having to do with outdoors. I know Metalcloak, we've been blessed with having what ended up becoming a very good year, and we went into immediate lockdown as soon as information hit and Sacramento County was going to lock down, and the information came along our way. We went into immediate survival mode. We were in great position overall, and our listeners can go back and listen to the episodes with Larry and John Herrick and Dave from Northridge, and you can see what we discussed and what we did about that time of the year when everything kind of went crazy. But as we're moving forward now, at the end of the year, we're looking at this year like, this has been amazing. Our staff are off right now. We gave them this week off because they worked so hard and they did so much, and they stuck with us, especially when the opportunity was there for them not to stick with us. We told them what they could do if they needed to in the very beginning. Here's where you go. This is the government agency to talk to. This is what you need to do if you don't want to stay with us. But those that stuck around have done very well, with bonuses and other things. And I know talking with Martin in the early days, just hearing about what it was like in your world too, with just the amount of orders going out and not having quite enough staff and having to do all the work to build up. It must have been crazy.
It was pretty nuts. We laid off some folks in the early days when the initial panic set in. But really, we just kind of trimmed some of the fat, if you will. We're running great now with virtually the same staff we had. We've added some of them back, but it's been good, and we've become more efficient, and because we had to be.
Does this year tend to then kind of eliminate some of the, at the beginning of the year, we talked about there were so many new manufacturers, and you actually, the quote was, the tire industry was fighting for space because there were so many new brands out there that were all trying to compete in the same space. Does a year like this tend to then thin that out some?
So in the tire industry, we've had, on top of the pandemic situation, we've had a separate incident that has made it worse. So in May, they announced a pending tariff for 4 countries. So if you recall, 4 or 5 years ago, they put in place a tariff for Chinese built tires. Well, this year they announced a pending tariff for tires built in South Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, and one other country. Who am I forgetting here? Thailand, Vietnam, Korea, and Taiwan, which are all, Thailand is the number 2 imported tire manufacturing country in the world. So it's huge, and it doesn't affect just what we call tier 3 brands, the lower value brands. It affects the Bridgestones, the Coopers, everybody's there. Falcon is all coming. So it has a ripple effect throughout the industry, and that has put a significant crimp on the supply channel because of the timing. The tariff amounts are actually supposed to be announced today by the government, and tomorrow you'll see everybody start to jockey. The loser in it all is honestly, unfortunately, the consumer, because it started by the U.S. steelworkers, who are raising this because they feel like there's lower cost products out there, and all it does is raise the cost of the lower cost products because they're applying a tariff to it. But then the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 brands just jack up their price because they can, and they want to keep their relative price position to the lower price products. So the consumer is the loser. I won't go in a ton of detail, but on top of that, that has disrupted the entire tire industry from a supply channel. So there's been a shortage of tires, and still consumers chasing value because of the pandemic. So brands like ours in our value position are in high demand, particularly because of this tariff. Everybody wants to get it in before the tariff, which is tomorrow's the effective date. So if you didn't get products in the country by today, you're going to have to pay more for it tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's going to affect, I mean, you start talking about hitting people's pocketbook, and I mean, that's what usually gets their attention the fastest. Mr. Pewe, have you you seem to just reinvent yourself, and kind of, you are the Jeep guy. Like, what do you think? Are you having to change yourself again as we've gotten through this last 10 months, and going forward? What does that look like for you? What do you feel? Are you happy about it? Are you excited about it? Or are you still a little gun shy?
No, I think everything's going along really well. I mean, as far as myself, I spent 25 years in the publishing industry. Before that, I had for 10 years my own 4-wheel drive shop, and before that, working as a mechanic and counterperson. So I have the background in Jeeps that I think is a valuable asset for whatever I do, and that's why I enjoy teaching people things. I enjoy going on Gone-Gpn, and I enjoy going on this show, because this is where Jeep people go, and I am a Jeep person. I was asked to do some work with the development of the Bronco, and I had to tell them that, my heart's in Jeep. Simple as that. Of course I could help and do this sort of thing, but Jeep is kind of my middle name. That's what I got to do. So as we go forward, whatever it brings is good. I love working with Jeep and doing the events with them on either the production side or on the media side. Right now I'm doing, Gone-Gpn is a media company, so we're going to do that sort of thing. And the more people that goes out and has fun with their Jeeps. I mean, that's what the Modern Jeeper is all about, right?
That's right.
Finding new people, bringing them into the fold, going out and just enjoying it. And I'm doing that. Fortunately, I'm now in Arizona, so I don't have to worry about the cold or the smog or the Los Angeles or any of that.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Good. Yeah. And I have my fleet of Jeeps to keep me busy. I got something like 36 different Jeeps that I work on. It's incredible how much work it takes just to keep a few of them driving. So it's not like I'm not busy. I'm busier more than I ever have been once I retired. Now, Larry, probably same thing. You're busier than ever.
None of you guys are retiree types. None of you are.
No,
so that's the beauty of it. Because even if we're out doing something else with it, but go ahead, Corey.
I actually had the opportunity beginning, well, it was just a number of months ago. Was out. I've never been into Mount Zion, and we were at Trail Hero and reached out to Sherry and Larry and wanted to go up into the Mount Zion Park and do some hiking and stuff, and reached out to them and got to use their service to take us up into the park. And again, I here's a guy who I've known as he's the race guy, right? I mean, he's done it all in a Jeep and done some crazy stuff, some extreme builds. And I've got one of his staff taking me on a hike up in Mount Zion, and it was fabulous. And people were just blown away, and they were able to go outside and go hiking. But Larry, the tour business, when we talked in 2019 or about 2019, you were still trying to figure out who your customer was. And it kind of it made its decision for you, I guess.
Yeah, and the customer totally changed from what our customer was in 2019 to what our customer was in 2020 is totally different. The summer was full of international travelers, and we were trying to figure out how to reach these people. And this year it was all domestic travelers, of course, just because they couldn't go anywhere, and it's people road tripping. And they show up to the park and can't get in because it's at capacity, and now they're looking for something to do. And we just happen to be in the right place, the right time for that, I guess. The park predicts that that's going to happen again this year. They're still going to limit their shuttle trips into the park just because they can't. They're on a totally different standard than what we are for the separation, I guess. They can only put 19 people in their shuttles that normally would hold 90 people. And
oh, wow.
So there's thousands of people every day that can't get into the park without some sort of guide. We just happen to be permitted at the right place and ready to do that. So we bought several new vehicles this year. We've got 3 2020 Jeeps and bought a Ford van just to haul them in, and I'm on my second Gladiator. So
wow.
I was going to mention that last year we did talk about Gladiators a lot, and as it turns out, Larry's got 2 now. Corey has 1 now. I've got 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Andrew, do you have one yet?
I do not.
And Rick? Yeah,
they're fun.
No, I got a Grand Cherokee Trailhawk. That was
well, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I mean, it's like we've actually expanded the Gladiator family, because I think, Larry, you were the first one that had you purchased one right away, didn't you?
Yeah, we got one of the early ones with the idea that it was going to be my daily driver for a while, and I was going to look like a fun, and it was a fun truck to drive. And then we got so busy that I had to cut it up and make it a multi-seater, and I was kind of bummed that I had to give it up and turn it over to the tour business. So this one, I've said that it's going to be mine to drive for a while and kind of enjoy for a little bit before I give it to the tour business. Once they go into the tour business, they get trashed. They're in the dirt, at least half of their life, if not more. Tops are off, dust is in everything. They rattle apart. We don't have time to air up and air down, so we're trying to find a tire pressure that works on the road when you're loaded, and in the dirt when to trying to keep it smooth. So they just get thrashed. So this one, my plan is to enjoy it for a while before I turn it over. But if this year ends up like, or if 2021 ends up like 2020 did, then I'm sure it'll get turned into a tour Jeep quickly.
So amongst all of us, Larry, you probably see the most general public people, and I think Corey was out there seeing a lot of Jeepers, but you see most general public people. What has been the general sense from people? Are they just like putting up with what's going on and they just expect this is the way life's going to be, or is there gold at the end of the rainbow? I mean, what do you hear from people?
It's so crazy. I learned so much about humanity this year that I'm also a little disappointed, I guess. We've had to be the adult for thousands of people this year. Don't forget that we're on mountain time. Don't forget to show up a little early because we have to leave on time, and things that you wouldn't think you'd have to say to adults, but you have to. But it's funny, about half our customers, you have to fight them to put a mask on to get into the truck, which is a requirement from the Park Service. And half of them are upset because somebody got in and their nose was exposed, and they refused to get into the truck with somebody having their nose exposed. So it seems like it's turned into a kind of a political thing. I know that in Springdale, which is the city that abuts Zion, kind of like Moab and a lot of beautiful places, they tend to be a lot of liberal hikers, and they were the first in Utah to require that every business require their patrons to wear a mask, and of course the National Park Service requires that everybody in our trucks wear a mask, and
which we were, and our guides were happy for.
Yeah, and our guys actually appreciated the fact that because we get people from all over the country coming here, so they're very susceptible, and we had to provide a plan to the park to let them know what we're going to do to protect not only the guests but the guides. And most of our guides, I don't think, would have got into the vehicle with a bunch of strangers unless we had a pretty stringent policy. So, it was pretty important that we did that. But unfortunately, me, Sherry, my daughter, my mother-in-law, just about everybody in our circle has had COVID now. So I feel like Superman now, knowing that I hopefully won't be able to get it again, and I can walk into grocery stores and bring it on.
Well, I was talking to one guy who had it recently, and he said that week was probably one of the worst weeks in his life. But 2 weeks later, he said he felt the greatest he's ever felt. And it could be just that it was so bad that normal feeling is great. But he says, I don't have any back pain. I don't have any headaches. I don't have any stomach problems anymore. I mean, it was weird. It's like 2-3 weeks later, he was feeling great. All his normal problems were gone. I tried to convince him it was all in his head, but who knows? Maybe COVID's the new, the new cleanser.
The new cleanse.
Right.
I didn't have I had very mild symptoms. Sherry, her only symptoms basically were loss of taste and smell, and she still, can't taste the food like she used to. Her mother, who is 74, had it and has recovered greatly, or recovered well. And most of the people I'm out here camping with have had it, so it wasn't as bad as, for us at least, as we thought. And I consider myself part of that high risk group. I've got diminished lung capacity because of radiation. They warned me because of having cancer that it might hit me harder, but I don't feel like it was. Well, it definitely wasn't worth shutting the country down for, but I could be an exception to the rule. So I know there's a friend of ours right now who's actually in the hospital in Arizona because his symptoms were much more extreme than ours, and he's the same age and same health conditions I have. So,
hey guys, I have an idea. We can have like Rick. We can ModernJeeper and we can work together on this. COVID positive only trip, like total party, because everybody's
right.
If you test positive for antibodies, you're in.
You're in.
No mask, no.
The party's on.
No separation, no mask. We can
No mask.
pass around a jar of moonshine again and not have to worry about.
And we charge extra for those that
That'd
want
be
to come and
nice.
be a part of the party and catch it, because there are those that just say, just give it to me, will you? Just give it to me.
Yeah, we've had people would say, yeah, we said the same thing. That, hey, listen, we want it. We want to get it over with. And I'm thinking, well, you don't know exactly how it might hit you, so I wouldn't say that you necessarily want it. But
Right. Don't wish it on anybody but yourself.
Right.
So okay. So you're seeing that now. What about Andrew from your perspective, just in just the employees? We were talking about that before, but not just in the customer base, but in hiring people and dealing with that. With what you've had to deal with down there in the warehouse. Are you guys fully staffed up again? Did you have struggle with anything trying to hire people down in SoCal?
So it hasn't. California is a different animal, as all of you know well. Most of you have fled this state, luckily. So I wish I could be right behind you. One day I will be, but it's been different here, and I think it's people are tired of it, even here. But I think here we're more in this forced bubble, and people see it they're a little more sensitive to it here. I did do some traveling this year for work. And I was in Texas for a trip, and people look at it completely differently in Texas. So the reluctance to put on a mask that Larry talked about, there are people in Georgia where I grew up, same thing, Florida there. So we've got 20 plus distribution centers all over the country. So, and we've seen varying levels. We've of course had some employees, but we're still less in a company that's over almost 600 employees. We're still only have had like 50 people that have had it. And the distribution centers are the ones that are worse because there's people in close proximity. And if they weren't wearing a mask for any period of time, they had, and there's now regulations where you have to do all the contact tracing and all the other stuff. It's nuts from an HR perspective.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nightmare. We recently did an event, December the 12th. So just a few weeks back, we did an event, what we called XPD in Expedition 1, was because it was the first event. But we had a permit. I permitted to run the Mojave Road with 20 vehicles. It was a small group, invitation only. And then the next stay-at-home order came, and they rescinded the permit 3 days before our event started. And I'm like, what are we going to do? But we modified the course. We went into Arizona and Nevada instead of California. And luckily, knock on wood, we had an awesome event. And I was really surprised by the people there who didn't want to wear a mask. And at my first driver's meeting, we gave out the buffs or whatever you call them that they can pull up. We gave them to all the attendees, and said, hey, out of respect for others, because you don't know how they perceive it or what their conditions are, we're giving you these to wear them for, please. But the vast majority of people, I think there were only 2 people that were really consistently wearing a face covering for the majority of the event. And we social distanced and did our thing, but and obviously me as the corporate guy, I had to keep mine on and do the PC thing when I was in any close proximity. But I think the story I'm trying to portray here is, I think in general, most people are getting tired of being told what they need to do. At least in our, the people we run with that do this outdoor sort of thing and off-road thing are tired of it, because we're not necessarily on the liberal side of things.
Right. Rick, what's your perspective?
Well, I've seen much the same thing, and it really comes down to your own personal responsibility and what the group that you hang with decides to do. When you're having a private event like Andrew's, then you have a little bit more leeway. But when it's a corporate private event, then, like he said, he had to be Mr. PC and do what he had to do. Either way, I think the way it's going to get resolved is learn how to navigate all of the different rules. The permits, again, that's really a tricky one. I've tried to do events without permits and found ways around them, like going into Arizona and such and the like. But this one is a little bit larger because it is a pandemic rather than just somebody saying, oh, we don't want you driving on that dirt. You have to drive over this dirt. It's dealing with people. And if everybody learns how to deal properly with people, like Larry having, his guides say, look, you got to have your masks on, and that's the rule. Come with us or don't. And then people can decide which way they want to do it. And that works out the best regardless. People will gravitate toward what they want to do. You guys are here, the others are here, and everybody goes and has a good time.
Well, I think that's been kind of what we've seen this last year, though, most directly, is there's a certain thing that we want to do. And when we're driven to do it, we're willing to compromise to do it. Like whether it's go to the store, go to a restaurant. I had an argument with, early on with the girl over at Blaze Pizza because you couldn't go in the store. And this is before California made it mandatory to wear a mask, but you couldn't go in there and order pizza without wearing a mask. So, I did this thing. Oh, no, you can't do that. Right. And nothing did. So it became a situation where ultimately there are some people I know that have held their principles and said, well, fine, I will not go someplace that requires me to do certain things. Those people have gravitated to this new world of ordering your food from Postmates or Grubhub or other places where they don't need to do that, where all their groceries get delivered. I know my wife has been experimenting with Sprouts and having groceries delivered. And it's this economy that has been created outside of just our own world and the own Jeeping world. I'm sure the Jeepers out there that we have and members of our fan have all experimented with this new economy. And just looking at this, we're doing this as fun to record on a podcast, but this is the new normal for many companies.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
California, I don't know what it's like where you guys are at, but I know in California, especially, there's going to be a lot of vacant businesses. I have one of the companies that one of my employees' wives worked for. Thousands of employees all have been working from home since March, April, and have been told to stay home indefinitely. And they're getting so they have tens of thousands of square feet of office space that is simply going to go empty. And they're either going to just offload it and decide this is the new normal. The state of California alone has millions of square feet of office space that's being unused. Now, as a Sacramento resident who has to commute through government traffic, I appreciate the fact that they're because my commute has gone from 30 minutes down to 6 minutes. But but this is the new future. Thankfully, again, we're all in a business where it works for us. But how they're dealing with, like, Rick, you were talking about Jeep, and you have a close relationship with Jeep. How are they dealing with the manufacturing process? How are they going through the process of manufacturing these Jeeps? Because production hasn't really slowed down under these new conditions. What are they doing over there?
They've actually instituted a lot of the things, like, of course, masks and the social distancing, and thinking about where the traffic flow of everything and meetings just like this, either on Zoom or Uber or whatever type of platform you want, is far more common. And remember that they are a large corporate entity, just like so many others, that they have to learn how to redo things. And again, that brings me back to the media world. One of the problems and the demise of magazines is because they didn't continue to evolve as far as the revenue stream. If they had, you'd still have magazines along with a good digital platform, and everybody would be making money. The car manufacturers have learned how to do that because they had to. Simple as that. They need to sell their vehicles, so they're going to make changes to get that going.
It's interesting. I feel like this year has been such a we've figured out ways to do the things that we want to do. We just maybe do them a different way. But it's such I almost feel guilty sometimes, and I have to learn to do a better job being very careful about who I'm having conversations with, because there are people who are absolutely upset that I still go do what I do because, I'm part of the problem then, and I should be staying at home. I should be quarantining. And I'm sorry, it's an interesting divide in our country right now. And I don't know. It's very difficult for me to. There's a lot of. I don't want to say that they're uneducated. They're very smart people. They're just very afraid. And I've never thought we'd get to our day-to-day lives, being afraid of doing things and afraid of speaking out and saying what we believe in. It's an odd time for sure.
Well, it is. And we see that when we go to the store. It's like I walk into a store, I put a mask on, even though I feel like I shouldn't have to, and it's ridiculous, but I'm doing it. So everybody there is doing it for one reason or another. Either you are scared, and I've been in a situation where I was in a store and I was 6 feet from somebody else, but she wouldn't pass me until I moved out of her way because she was literally scared and she was completely wrapped up. But that is what is happening. There is a true thing called fear. And that fear is there. Now, let's look at our off-road community. I have met members of off-road community on that who do have genuine fears. There was one of our attendees to Death Valley event had a genuine phobia. Like he did not want to be next to the edge of a cliff. And it wasn't because of a fear of heights. It was a fear that he would just simply have this urge to jump off it. Right? Literally, that was his phobia. But he wasn't scared to go driving up the side of a cliff, right? And so it's interesting in our community where we don't tend to, there's a certain amount of rugged individualism that we all have, right? And, we have all kind of worked forward to a life where we have that individualism. Andrew moving to the top of his career, and Pewe just doing what you've wanted to do by, no matter what, on your own, and Larry building up a company and moving on and starting a new company and keep going, and Corey living a life where he can just do whatever he wants to do, and Jessy just going out and racing and it's you guys we're all rugged individuals, but I think this represents the Jeep community, right? There's a lot of us who chose Jeeps for freedom, and I think that word freedom means a lot to the modern Jeeper, a lot more maybe than to some others, and that's unfortunate. And I'll blame that on our high school education, that doesn't teach what freedom is anymore. But again, not trying to get political. Let's look forward to 2021.
So this is interesting. I read a little when I was taking notes from our last podcast. I came across an article, and anybody have any idea what the number one story was Jeep related from this last year?
Oh God,
I have no idea.
Story on what?
Well, it wasn't even really a story, but it kind of was. It was a story, but it was mostly a video.
A number one video with a Jeep.
Yep.
That was not porn related.
Nope.
Commercial related?
The crash test.
The crash test.
Remember the crash test of the 2019 Jeep Wrangler? And people played that video over on YouTube millions of times, slow motion. Well, I think we even put it up on Modern Jeeper, I think, at the beginning.
Right. That's interesting. So
isn't that it kind of makes sense for the way 2020 worked out?
Well, yeah, that fits right into the whole pattern.
Right.
Now we're talking about Twisted Tea.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So let's 2020 happened. We headed into it thinking it was going to be completely different than it was. We made it all through it. We've survived. We've evolved, not only in our habits and our daily routines. What's 2020 going to be like? I talked to guys in our Christmas party episode last week to get an idea of what they saw the next year to be. But what do you guys expect 2021 to be? I look at it and go, especially from a Modern Jeeper standpoint, and Rick touched on this earlier, there are a lot of groups getting together and doing essentially what the Modern Jeeper Adventure is, or what your events are going to be, Rick, where, although I think you are definitely like doing these things 10 times larger than we are, but it's these intimate groups, these intimate adventures, these chance to get together with people and get out and do things I see as a continuation. I don't know where events are going to be. I don't know if EJS is going to ultimately happen or not. Right now it's planned, but then it's not, then it's planned. What's the world of events going to be like? And if you usually go to your events and you usually travel to events, this is the secondary follow-up question. Are you planning on going to events this year? Rick?
Yes, I plan to go on to as many events as I possibly can, but I think there will be fewer of them and they will be smaller. Like EJS, it just may not happen the way that you usually would think it will be. Right. But there still can be the same amount of people spread out over a larger area. Because this is one of the problems with Moab is they had no facilities should somebody get sick during last year's non-EJS. The infrastructure just isn't there. But if you spread that out and spread everybody out on the trails over a longer period for wherever you're going with smaller groups and more intimate groups, I think you're going to actually find a better experience for everybody. It's like Larry's business, if he had 1,000 people a day, that'd make a lot of money, but it wouldn't give the people there a good experience. I think it needs to be spread out and changed. Again, everything has to evolve more, just like Andrew's trips and your trips. If everything just goes that direction, I think we're going to have a lot of more happy Jeepers.
Well, and it'd be interesting because we're going to get more Jeepers, more off-roaders. There's more options out there. We can talk about the options that Jeep has thrown at us this last year. We haven't talked about that yet, but there's so much more happening. How about you, Larry? Because you were big into events and just going to events just for the fun of seeing people and friends. Are you going to do much this year, Larry? Oh, we lost Larry. I like that frozen screen though. It looks kind of good. It is. Larry will be probably joining us in. Andrew, how about you? What's Milestar planning to do?
So, we don't believe that the large scale events are going to be popping back up anytime soon on a frequent scale because of all of the local government regulation BS. Excuse my French. We don't believe that you're gonna see the EJSs, the Jeep Beaches, the other big events because there's so much bureaucracy involved in the current state, which is why we launched this expedition series of events to do those similar to your events, more intimate, smaller groups. The engagement was incredible, and the feedback was great afterwards too. I was shocked. We did 20 vehicles again. That includes hours as well, so that's all total vehicle count, but the ones who were there were absolutely thrilled with it. They said it felt like old school off-road events because everybody was talking, hanging around the fire, eating together, instead of you go do your trail ride and then you disperse and go back to your condo or your hotel room or whatever. But again, it was more like an excursion, a full expedition, kind of like an old Ultimate Adventure, but not to that extreme. But you were together almost 24/7 for 3 days.
Yep.
So you just the quality of the engagement is much greater than a large scale event.
And we went to some smaller events this year that we don't normally get to go do either. And those were awesome. I mean, we had a lot of great conversations along the way. So
we've talked a lot over the years about the CTI trailer and what a good marketing tool that is, but it's also for us to go to somewhere like Jeep Beach or even Easter Jeep Safari and bang out 100 rigs on the trailer for 4 days straight, that's great when we're looking for data and numbers and things like that. But if we really want to connect with people, man, 20 rigs in that same amount of time is far more effective. And I think that's what the event organizers are finding out as well.
Well, so what we're seeing that is that trend of more and more companies doing that, spending the resources instead of sending a team out marketing across the country, doing what Andrew's doing, and putting together their own little intimate events with their customer base and bringing it out. And that's true. I mean, it connects great. What about you, Larry? Going to events now that you've joined us back? Welcome back there. What about for you going to events? You've gone to events a lot for helping. Have you stopped doing that? Or are you just too busy for it? What do you plan on doing in 2021?
I still love the events. I went to an event in Moab that I didn't think was going to happen this year, but it was totally different than what we normally see. Scaled way back. There wasn't a big. I mean, it was a vendor show, but didn't seem like a normal vendor show. Everybody was kind of apprehensive. The trails were smaller. It was actually kind of cool. I mean, we had a great time. I'm sitting here at the Hammers. I'm right about where the registration tent would be for King of the Hammers this year or for 2021. And if it actually happens, it'll be the biggest event that's happened in the United States since the pandemic was made official, I guess. I know Dave's jumping through hoops to make this event happen. And I know there's a lot of people that are very upset that they have to get tested before they come. And I know there's a lot of people that say they aren't coming, but I think most of us here have realized that it's kind of a different world. And if you want to kind of have some sense of normalcy, you have to change a little bit. You've got to wear a mask if you want to go to an event like this. And having a test is, especially if Dave's buying them, why not just take the test and show up?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, he's spending $800,000 in advance to have these tests done so that he can have this event. Wow. That's a huge risk, and I hope it happens. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing people that I haven't seen for at least a full year, and if not more.
How is that going to happen? I mean, it's one thing to have all the racers out there and have all that kind of regulation and have the racers to follow rules and standards to make sure that the race itself happens. And as we all know, the online coverage is better than sometimes than being there in person anyway.
Right.
But the 50,000 people that come out to the lake bed just to be out there, how is that going to even be possible?
And I think he's done. I mean, he hired a consulting firm to figure out, is it even possible? Is it a pipe dream to think that King of the Hammers can happen in 2021? But they found a way. And Dave never wanted King of the Hammers he never intended for it to be a spectator sport. It was, that's why we always had the race on Friday, because he didn't want to interfere with the trail wheeler on Saturday. That would be out there normally on a Saturday. This year, the race is actually on a Saturday, so the spectators have become a big part of this event. I love watching the live coverage, and I've had to do it the last couple of years because I couldn't be here. But it's still not the same as being here on the lake bed. I mean, I probably knew more about what was going on watching it on the live coverage, but
it's
such a different experience to actually be here in person and smell the fumes and see the dust and freeze your ass off and watch the thing blow over.
Or sit on Boone Road for an hour and a half trying to get in and out.
Or getting out and getting out.
Right. Yeah. So, which is interesting. I wonder what it's like being a somebody who's never, ever been there and doesn't know it personally, to just watch it online only.
I still love the events. I still love, because of Poison Spider, we made friends that were all over the country, and we saw them at these events, and some of them we saw over and over again. It was like, like Corey, it was like a traveling circus. You got to see people, 10 times a year that you might not normally see. I'm sorry, I don't know if this popped up on your screen, but I can't get it off mine. Anyway, we traveled the country, and I get to see my friends, at least 13 different events over the years.
Hi.
She's my IT department, so
I don't know.
There's a big iCloud thing right in my face here, but
we still see you just fine.
Yeah, we see you fine. Your camera, it's not including your camera, so
okay. Yeah,
well,
so
I know,
and I the biggest thing I miss about Poison Spider is not being able to go to as many of those events, but I still like to go to the ones local, like the Easter Jeep Safari. The King of the Hammers is still a big one for us. I still like to, everybody there is
plus a trail hero in your area. That's getting to be one of the biggest events in the region now.
That was probably one of the biggest events that happened in Utah this year. And I think he timed it perfect. It was like a little lull in the positive test.
Right in between.
If the event was a month later, I don't think it would have happened.
Right.
Well, what about business in 2021? It's kind of interesting. I'm going through that process right now of doing all the spreadsheets of analysis for last year, and then having to be predicting what next year is going to be, so we can understand our flows. Andrew, what are you guys doing? How are you trying to predict next year?
So I think the demand is going to be solid. I don't see any drop off in demand. The disruption in 2021 for the tire industry is going to be supply, based on those tariffs that I was talking about. So demand's going to be strong, and I'm confident we'd sell as many tires as we can get in the country. It's just going to be the supply disruption, and how severe is it? If these tariffs come in and they're 50%, there's going to be a significant amount of disruption, because all that's going to do is move the manufacturing to a different country that's not getting whacked. But if the tariff comes in and it's 10, 15, 20%, pricing is just going to go up and everybody will continue as normal.
And that'll affect us. The tariffs themselves have been interesting because we don't know what next year is going to be like, or the next couple of years with a different administration too. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially with China, and whether or not that tariff war comes to a close very quickly after January 20th.
One more comment on that. There are only two countries that have the manufacturing capabilities to supply North America. One's Thailand and one's China. And they can both pump in about 80 million tires a year into the US. So if the Trump tariff comes off of China and Thailand gets whacked with a big tariff, it's just going to move all that manufacturing back to China.
Interesting. Rick, for you, what are you going to be? Obviously, you just be growing your business, and tell us a little bit more so everybody knows what is your business. What are you doing right now? What is it really encapsulating?
It's all Jeep all the time. It's simple as that. It's called Gone-Gpn, Gone-Gpn, because we're Jeeping. We're not JEEP, right? You got to remember that in World War II, the first Jeeps were a GP, so that's where the word Jeep came from. So, which a little bit of a twist on that. Once we realized that the magazine was no longer going to be produced, one of my freelancers, Tracy Clark, came up with the name and the idea, and my tech editor, Stuart Bourdon, he says, "Yeah, I'm up for it." Chris Collard joined us. He's been around quite a while.
Quite a man.
Yeah, we all enjoy the same thing. We like getting together, talking Jeeps, doing videos. We've got a couple of young guys that are new to it, that really know their video stuff, and I got Mike Harrington, who used to do all of our video for Ultimate Adventure.
Yeah.
That's why he's doing all of our videos. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can actually see the fruits of our labor. And we try to do it much like you're doing it, just off the cuff and fun, because that's what Jeepers do. Simple as that. And we got Greg Henderson, who's from Unofficial Use Only. He's the one that's built a whole bunch of project vehicles. He's really good. So we're just a good little group. And are we going to do events? Yeah, I think we're probably going to have to do events. And my idea is not the 100 Jeeps that I did on JP Dirt Drive. That's a lot, all right? Yeah. You've been there.
But you did that so well.
You did.
Exactly. And all the Ultimate Adventures I've done, with help from the right people, I can pull it off. With our team, it's a good team. And I think going forward, we have something there. I don't think there's going to be a lack of anything going forward. People still want that stuff. You found that. Andrew found it. Larry found it. You all know people want to go do stuff. Just a matter of which direction and when. And again, government issues.
Yeah.
Right. We keep that on the back burner, figure out how to please everybody and the insurance. I think the land's still going to be there. The Jeeps are still going to be there. Jeep's still going to be building Jeeps. Look at the new models coming out.
Well, Corey, you just recently, I got to say, Corey, you recently, I got to tell everybody here, Corey has become a diplomat. I saw him just recently handling one of our agencies and just how he was doing it. I was like, yeah, I had to bow down to him. He was being very diplomatic and gaining friends, and that's what you've got to do it. You know that. Pewe, you've been doing it for a long time, and these groups appreciate being appreciated, right? They appreciate you actually are taking the time to help them as well, and then they try to help you back.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that you all said in January was that the Jeep industry, the marketing, the market for the Jeep owner is going to be this more overlanding guy. It's going to be this tweener guy. It's going to be the XT tire guy. It's going to be the guy who wants to go out and spend time with his family, whether that's in a YJ, a CJ, or a JT, or the new 392 coming out. I mean, there's so much interest, and it's been amazing to me, all the events that we've gone to this year. Even being limited this year, I still traveled 38,000 miles all around the country, and it's amazing because everywhere we go, people are so resilient. And well, maybe I should clarify that the Jeep owners are very resilient. They want to go out with us. They want to go out with you all. They want to be a part of something and be safe about it and not be hassled and not have to worry about what, issues they're breaking or what government agency they're infringing on or whatever. There's a ton of them out there and they're all chomping at the bit. So I think 2021 is going to be a lot of how do we give everybody what they're looking for and not have, to Rick's point, and not have 100 vehicles sign up for your 20 Jeep event. While we'd love to have 100 vehicles, it's not the same. Those events are different, and to have the kind of relationships we do with the people that we want to go wheel with, it's a smaller bit. Unless you got 100 guides that you can send out with a trip like that, and that's another different event.
And that's another different event, and that's one of the things as I see it coming full circle. Back in the old days, you had Jeep clubs, and they were 10, 20, maybe 50 if you're really crazy in the club, 50 Jeeps. And then it evolved, and finally they were called four-wheel drive clubs because we had to let Toyotas in, right? All right. I mean, Larry knows this very well. But Victor Valley four-wheelers, right?
Those Toyota guys, I don't know.
And eventually it grew bigger and bigger, and then everybody wanted to do their own thing. And then with the advent of the internet and everything else, that old school type of club started to disappear. And it was a bunch of buddies that did this and over here, and the old-fashioned club disappeared. And now I see it coming back, but in a way that, like Andrew's doing, there's 20 people. That was actually a club of disparate people that went out with you. And on Matson, your trips, Corey, that's what is, in a way, coming back as a club, where everybody wants to do the same thing that little group is doing, rather than going to this big event for a full week and then doing your trail and trundling off to your motorhome or your apartment.
Right.
So that's why I see that coming full circle around.
Yeah, and the best events are you can go to a Victor Valley four-wheeler event here at Johnson Valley, and there may be, hundreds of Jeeps here, but it's not fun until you've got 10 or 12 Jeeps on one trail, and then it's fun, and you really build a relationship with those 10 or 12 people that are on the trail.
That's your group, your club.
And that for Poison Spider, that was critical. I mean, I would rather go to Easter Jeep Safari and lead a group of people, 20 or 30 people, maybe 20 people, not 30, on Pritchett. Then stand at the vendor show for 14 hours. I think I made a better connection on the trail than I would ever make on standing at the vendor show for 14 hours trying to.
And you'd also have more fun.
Right?
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
That's what this is all about.
I loved when Poison Spider got big enough where I didn't have to go to the vendor show for that Thursday and Friday, and I actually got to go on the trail. I thought that was the best thing ever. And I tried to talk to the people at Red Rock Four Wheelers and say, listen, there's the same 3,500 to 10,000 people. I don't know what your numbers are. They vary every year, but they're all going to go to the show. And if it's 2 days, they're going to come in and trickle through that show over the 2 days, or you can make it 1 day. And everybody's going to take that day off and come to the show. And because I'd rather I just drove 700 miles. I want to go wheeling, I don't want to spend 2 days, I don't want to spend 28 hours standing at this vendor show when it's the same amount of people.
Then your Metalcloak, where I make Corey set up on Monday and be there all week.
Right. And that's when you know you've made it, Matson.
I listen, I have not wheeled. The last time I wheeled Moab was actually a ModernJeeper event, and before that it had been almost 5 years, because I make sure to hang out there with Corey and make sure that he's not alone. I get him. I actually am his coffee guy, his lunch guy.
This is true. Yeah, this is true.
I go get the food. I mean, I'm just a gopher. I have to sit there. He doesn't even let me near the trailer anymore.
Moab's actually pretty cool. It's a cool place to wheel. You should try it, Moab.
You should go.
You should.
That's what I loved about doing the ModernJeeper Adventure, because when we went there during Memorial Weekend, it was a hugely busy weekend, but there's not as many Jeepers. So all the trails are more open. So it was a chance to enjoy it, because again, I had only been there during Easter Jeep Safari over the years. So it was a chance to go out there and just enjoy these trails with, in some cases, brand new Jeepers. And you're right, just that chance. So I think we're seeing a theme here, one that we started a few years ago, but I think it's coming more and more in fruition, that 2021 is we an opportunity to get together with your friends in more intimate environments or meet new people in more intimate environments. Business is going to be good, knock on wood. So far, despite a Biden administration, we will get through it all. But are there any predictions? What's your major prediction there? So we're going to throw in this prediction. Pewe, you first. By the way, Corey, do you have any notes on the predictions for last year?
I do.
Let's bring those up real quick.
Get those up, and I'll throw out a couple.
All right.
Last year, Larry basically stated that this year was going to be economy dependent. We're going to have to be creative, and he predicted there was going to be a dip. Wasn't sure what kind of a dip it was going to be, just that the economy was going to take some kind of a small hit. Rick was looking for his prediction was that within 5 years there was going to probably be a correction in the economy.
Absolutely.
That magazines will go video, and the digital is not going anywhere. So magazines, even though there's going to be some niche magazines popping up, but for the majority, magazines would go digital, and they'd be focusing their attention on digital. Mr. Hoit stated no economic crash this year, but that the economy was fragile. And it was very interesting if you go back and listen to these couple of statements here, because there was some really pretty decent insight. The companies needed to differentiate with their products, and that was how companies were going to stay on top of their game. Again, he mentioned the XT type of wheeler, that tweener, less extreme and more overlanding. Not bad.
Not bad, guys.
I'd say we all nailed it pretty well.
Yeah.
That's we should quit while we're on top, right? We're going to put you in the hot seat again. So predictions.
Larry, my prediction on Jeeps. Okay.
There we go. Well,
the 392 was great. Okay. Go ahead. You want my prediction?
Listen, we haven't even talked about all the Jeeps, the Jeep options that came out. You did the 392. So Corey, let me ask you this: should we you want to do predictions, or we want to talk Jeeps and then go back to predictions? Get them a time to think about it a little.
I mean, we can talk about a couple of Jeeps here, and then we can. That way, they do have some soaking in-ness to do.
Yeah. You got to mull on this. Okay, so let's talk about the Jeeps. Pewe, you take it away.
The 392 is something that we've all wanted. Obviously, a V8 and a Wrangler, and all the signs were there, and a few people knew a little bit more than other things, but it was bound to happen. And then when the Bronco came, maybe the timeline had to be shoved up just a little bit. But driving that thing is a blast. I'm sure all of you have driven V8 Wranglers anyway, and then this one is factory. I mean, there's nothing like the old AEV ones. Those are phenomenal anyway. But this one is actually from a factory instead of one that looks like it's from a factory. So it's incredible. The Mojave is an awesome, go fast creation that probably was born out of Johnson Valley. The reason it came about is because they felt they needed a fast Jeep. Excuse me. And the newest one coming up, I think you're really going to like, is the 4xe, the electric Wrangler.
It's time to market, Corey. Isn't that coming up here now? January or something?
They're rolling off the show, the assembly line floor right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we'll ultimately replace all of our vehicles with, will be the electric Jeep. We typically do 100 miles a day max. We've got a place we can, besides payroll, our number 2 expense is fuel. So I think that'll be the smart Jeep for us. And I can't wait to.
Well, maybe we can talk Jeep. So is Jeep, the actual charging station for this? I don't know if anybody's gotten their eyes on it. How different is it? Is it for the Universal? Is it going to be something that's going to be easy for you, say, to install at your shop and get several of them up there, Larry? Or
I just assumed it was going to be, if you had access to power, you're going to be able to adapt to this. I can't imagine it being so unique that you'd have to have some special charging station. If it is that way, then it'll be, might be a different story. But I can't imagine that they've limited themselves to a unique power source.
Well, you wonder if you're going to do
Go ahead,
Rick. I want to hear what Rick says about this.
It's not like a hydrogen. It's not like a hydrogen fuel cell car that you're never going to find fuel for.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they do the kind of the hybrid system where some you can have multiple methods. You can have the fast charger, or just the one that uses your household power. I wonder what they're going to put into the Rubicon Springs, right? What are they going to put out there?
This is going to be a generator in a monolith,
right?
Or in the old days, they used to bring a trailer behind electric vehicles with a generator.
I was going to say, just fire up the generator, put fuel in the generator to charge the.
Yeah,
and a lot of them have the same plug that has a module that detects whether it's the rapid charge or the slower charge. So it doesn't take a different plug. It'll just be a universal plug, one in the side of the car, and it'll be the brains for you.
Right, it's just like your phone. You have fast chargers and slow chargers on an iPhone, and it already knows.
But if you use a fast charger on the iPhone, it destroys the iPhone battery. So
So they say.
So that'll be cool. So the 4xe. So of this group now, I'm going to look at y'all. We got 5 here, right? So of those, 3 of us have Gladiators. So anybody can have a 4xe next year? Besides Larry, you're going to buy. How many are you going to get next year?
I'm just going to rotate them in. I won't just replace the whole fleet, but as they age out, time out, I'll replace them with electric. I almost didn't buy this Gladiator. I was thinking I should just order the electric one, but I wanted a Gladiator so bad I couldn't wait.
Well, I'll tell you what. As soon as you have it, we'll come bring you back onto the show and just talk 4xe. All right. It's such a fascinating rig. It's such a fascinating numbers, and Corey did an episode pretty much all about it.
Yeah,
in our tech quarter episode.
Well, it's when you look at the specs on it, it's since it's an electric motor, but more torque than the 392, which of course, obviously, it's going to peak. It's not going to be the same kind of a torque line or a torque curve, but pretty amazing. I mean, the technology, it's just like us being able to have do this podcast all over the country. The new Jeep, all that technology. I just bought a Gladiator. Like I get in it and it takes me 10 minutes to start the damn thing. So, yeah.
And it's because I thought you were always like an early adopter of tech, though. I mean, you're just like the guy who should just be able to plug his brain right in and it just starts right up.
It's weird. There's some technologies I really embrace. For some reason, I feel like since I can't work on that thing, it's very frustrating.
That's what it is. Okay, listen, guys. So I'm not the mechanic in the bunch. Okay, I'll be the first. My father was a mechanic. I'm mechanically inclined, but I don't work on all my stuff. I'll be the first to admit that. So I go and I have a Chrysler minivan. It's the Chrysler Pacifica minivan. It's great for all the kids. I mean, we just load that thing up, right? We're about to go on a road trip, so I go to say, you know what? I should check the transmission fluid on this. I'm looking around. There's no dipstick. There's no tube.
The dipstick's driving.
Yeah, right, exactly. Problems in the chair, not in the computer. Right? And I mean, where things going. So I totally understand. Imagine having a 4xe and you can't even, something goes wrong with it. It definitely gets to the point where even your average garage mechanic isn't going to be able to work on these. I'm sure at Cloakworks we'll put parts on them, but there's going to be a point where we're going to have to figure out how many other things change when you start doing it. The Bronco, Rick, that's one thing looking at with that Boss suspension system. Right? There's how much of that can be changed. How much is that tied into the computer systems that you're going to have to be able to bypass just to do changes on the suspension system?
And it won't necessarily allow you to bypass it is the problem.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Well, somebody's going to be a computer hacker out there.
Everything else goes out. And then what do? Oh, you got a nice looking axle underneath there, but you can't go over 5 miles an hour because the computer says you're done.
Right.
Or you put a nice 42-inch tire on it and same thing. Can't drive it.
Right. Nice 42-inch Milestar.
Do you have to wear like one of those little grounding wrist straps when you work on those?
Exactly. Take off all your jewelry so you don't zap yourself.
You got the little toolkit with the little tiny screwdrivers?
With the little screwdrivers.
Yeah.
The new mechanic is going to be the Silicon Valley tech geek. Well, it's true now too. I mean, you got Teslas and everything else. It was a different world. Your guy just doesn't go down the street and open it up. That's why I love working on my motorhome. Big, massive engine, able to access to it, easy diesel, no def.
No def.
So, okay. So we talked
prediction
Jeep.
time.
Prediction time. Although, is anybody expecting anything new coming out this next year? I mean, we've already seen the new Ram truck coming. We've already seen, I've heard General Motors is going to be trying to come up with their competition, which who knows what they'll do. Ford is continuing to ramp up. They've got the Raptor is being redone again to compete against the Ram. We've got the Bronco, which when will we actually see the Bronco? 2022?
They're out there.
Yeah.
We saw a Sport the other day, but I guess the Sport is a completely different iteration of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's a rebadged Ford Escape.
Yeah, it really is.
When do the 400,000 people who have pre-ordered this start getting theirs? Is the question.
Well, you know what? Since we got Rick on here, I have I'm kind of curious because I get an email from one of the Jeep enthusiast panels asking me about what I think about some new technologies that they may or may not be developing. And they've actually asked questions regarding rear steer and the ability for, kind of like if we could have a transfer case that we could lock one wheel, maybe use ABS and do a front dig kind of thing. And if those options would be available from the factory.
I can't comment on unknown products.
Rick can neither confirm or deny any future products.
Remember a few years ago when we were told that there was no way we'd have a V8 in a Wrangler. There was no way we'd have a locking differential in the rear in two-wheel drive or in high range. Just remember how all that stuff didn't pan out, right? We have that stuff now. So you never say never. Two things to remember in a Jeep world. Never say never and never say always.
Well, then we'll look at. We all know there was a group that went through. A Jeep engineer went to the Rubicon. Was it 2 years ago? And the purpose of his trip was testing technology that would actually help the Jeep understand what was in front of it, what was behind it, with the idea of potential for self-driving. So my prediction in 5 years is that you just hit a button and it just goes through the Rubicon, and you just sit back and hang out, just point and shoot, hang out, have your drink. It's going over the Rubicon a little bit. You know,
it'll be like the little metal track down the middle that the Jeep will follow. It'll be like Disneyland.
You ever driven the auto correct where the car or the Jeep or the truck tells you when you're out of your lane, and all of a sudden it pulls you back, and you think it's a wind gust, so you go against it and it pulls you back more, and you're fighting yourself.
What I hate is when my Gladiator whose settings are a little too sensitive, all of a sudden senses something in front of you and decides to put on the brakes.
Oh yeah,
and you're like, no, this is something I would have just swerved around. Oh no, you don't get to do that. Change your settings. Okay, predictions. Let's go into predictions.
One more comment, real quick.
Yes.
I think Larry's on mute for starters. I didn't hear him speak, but I think he's muted. And I wanted to comment on Rick's comments about all of the new enhancements on Jeep. And I think we're going to continue to see them. And I think the reason we're seeing a V8 in a Jeep is because their sales from a unit standpoint are not historically what they used to be. They could sell fewer Wranglers this year than they did in 2019, 2018, and 2017, based on the sales trend. Definitely below 19 and 18, and maybe below 17. But because of that, and because of things like the Bronco and the new Ram, and just all of the other competing products that are competing in that space, you're going to see, I think, more bells and whistles thrown at us to continue to entice consumers to buy Jeeps over those other competing products. So I think we're going to see more things that, like the V8, things we've been screaming for as enthusiasts for a long, long time. And as Jeep lovers, we want all those things. You saw the four-wheel steer in the Hummer.
Yeah.
I mean,
competition's great.
GM has had that forever. Back in the day.
That's right.
Years ago.
I did a 4x4 of the year with you, Rick, that we had the rear steer Chevy.
Oh my gosh. The one we had to leave. Yeah. Because
so was that Hummer video real or was that CG? There's been some debate.
I'd say it'd be one of the two. That's all.
All right, predictions, my friends. Let's dig into predictions. And since we started with you, Larry, let's start with you this time.
God, it's there's that 600-pound elephant in the room.
You can say it.
Does the vaccine work? Is the new president going to have a totally different outlook? Or was this whole thing just to unseat the existing president? Well, but in our little world, which, and everybody is worried about their own little world, of course, but our little world, the announcement from the national parks that things are going to be just like they were in the summer of 2020, as far as they're concerned, that's big for us. I mean, that is very important for what we're doing. But as a country, how's that going to, or even if the pandemic was over today, or the international traveler is going to come back, are we going to travel internationally as freely as we, in 2019? I took a trip to Cabo this summer, and it was like everything was normal. Planes were packed, and which I didn't expect at all. But we had no European travelers. We had no Asian travelers, which are huge in our business. Normally there's busloads of people coming through our neighborhood, and none of that happened this year. But there were carloads of domestic travelers that came and filled up every single parking lot in Springdale and every seat in our Jeeps. And I think that, I was worried about this huge vacuum. If international travel didn't come back because people are still a little nervous about traveling, and all the domestic travelers that done it, they got in the car and bought their RVs and went traveling this year. What's going to happen next year? And I think that the Park Service prediction is that it's going to be very similar to what we had last summer. Even with the vaccine, now there's a new strand coming out. Apparently, that's
because they're doing school on the road.
Yeah, I just drove by a school in California that had a flashing yellow light, and I'm thinking, are kids even in school in California anymore? I know in Utah they are, but California, are they in school now? I mean, do I really need to slow down, or
depends on where you are?
I did, because Sherry just got a huge ticket in Utah. Well, she got a huge ticket in Utah for. The speed limit is 20 in Utah, not 25, apparently, through a school district. So, and that's a misdemeanor in Utah, by the way.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
So she was my bad girl. She was on parole for a year for.
Sherry's always been the bad girl.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see a lot of the same. I think that COVID is not behind us yet, and I think that we have at least still summer to figure out, what the new normal is going to be. That's
right. What about you, Rick?
I'm with Larry as far as COVID not going away next month. It'll be June, July, until things start to shape up, and we'll have more of a clear direction of how it's going to pan out. Pandemic out, yes. But within 2 years, everything, I think, will be back to our new normal. It won't be the same normal as before. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of hard work from everybody as far as that. But I do think, again, we have to evolve and roll with the changes, figure out how to do our jobs and our lives and everything else a different way. We can't do everything exactly the same. Now, I always hated constrained places and people and all their germs and everything else. And I love Purell. But does that mean I was crazy? No. It just means I use Purell more, right? So I think it's going to be fine. As far as business, I think the biggest problem is going to be supply. Even today, my guy that's a buddy of mine that does pools. He says, I can't get chlorine. I said, what do you mean you can't get chlorine? It's pools. He says, it's gone from $70 a bucket to $140 a bucket because they can't get the raw materials, all supply chain stuff. In the same way with tires and metal. My gosh, I would love to build a shop, except it's doubled in price because I want to steel building. Wow. So it's not necessarily things can't be done, but you're not going to be able to find it. Business-wise, I think everything will continue going up. As far as the political climate, I don't think it's going to make a big difference. Again, no matter what side you're on, there's checks and balances, so everything just continues to trundle along. It's so large, it's going to work out just fine. As far as Jeep, there's going to be more exciting things to come.
Nice. Andrew?
Yeah, more of the same. I agree with both Larry and Rick. I think 2021 is going to be largely the same as we experienced in 2020. I don't see anything changing, even when we get to a point with the vaccine or herd immunity or whatever. I think the bounce back is going to be slow for the majority of the population, because there's still going to be those. We've got a lot of phobic people out there that are just terrified that we were talking about earlier. Our circles, our rebellious Jeep circles, they're going to throw the mask away and run out into the streets. But the majority of the population is going to slowly reinsert themselves into the travel, into the restaurants, because they're still scared. I don't see 2021 bouncing back. I think it'll be, and even when we do get to that point, it's going to be a slow recovery. Economically, I think, again, to echo, demand's going to stay steady and strong. And we didn't really dive into the overlanding versus overlanding still exploding. And I think we're seeing it continues to climb. And I think we see it. I experienced it or witnessed it kind of crossing with the traditional off-roader / rock crawler at this last event we did, because we had multiple Jeeps on 40s at this event, but we didn't do any extreme rock crawling. We also had a Subaru on 235 75 15s.
It did the same trail.
We did break the Subaru, and it didn't make it to the second day, but I think everybody enjoyed it without it having to be as an extreme. And just to be Rick, back with you, riding, participating in Ultimate Adventures in the past, it was like a miniature Ultimate Adventure without as much extreme wheeling, but the guys on 40s still had a blast, because it wasn't about, oh man, I climbed that waterfall or whatever. It was about good people, good times, cool vehicles, and just enjoying the camaraderie. So I think we're going to see more of that, and we're going to, but the recreational overlander is going to continue to blow up because people want to get outdoors.
Absolutely.
Well, we bought Cargo Master Safari back in January, and it was just because the opportunity was there and they weren't really putting much into it. And it's now Adventure Rack Systems within our system, but it was poignant for it was this moment for us saying, hey, let's just expand out. And now it's proven to be incredibly timely because of this explosion into in what you call the hybrid there, the rock crawler, because our customer base, mostly rock crawlers, built up their rigs, love their daily driver, still want to take it on a trail. Now they're throwing racks on it, and they're throwing rooftop tents, and they're going out to enjoy life even more. So I think you guys are definitely on point with that. Corey, anything you want to add in there, my friend?
No, I think that I feel very fortunate that we're able to be in the industry that we're in and being able to have the perspectives that we do. And again, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys if it wasn't for each and every one of you guys that has been an influence on me throughout the last 10 years of my life. And it's fun. It's what I enjoy doing. It drives me crazy to sit at home, and that was Rick's fault. The camaraderie that is part of this Jeep industry is it is insanely addictive, and this year wasn't going to stop me, and it really didn't. And I think it was we had a really good year. We learned a lot of things, but we always learn a lot of things. And if anything, going into next year, it's just we've got to be a little bit more able to adopt very, very quickly. You can't go, well, I always go to this event and it's always done this way. Well, like Rick said, you never say always, because that's going to change. So, so just, happy holidays to you guys, and cheers.
Absolutely. And this is for all of our listeners. You guys will be listening to this on New Year's Eve. So hopefully you're all having a fantastic and safe and socially distanced New Year's Eve party, apparently. But for all of our listeners, how do they get a hold of you, Rick?
Simple. Just go to Gone-Gpn.com. There's a way to contact us right there, or just do my email. I always like that, rick@rickpewe.com.
Perfect. Larry, how do they get a hold of you?
Website, ZionJeepTours.com, and Larry at ZionJeepTours.com for my email.
Perfect. And Andrew?
We are MilestarTires.com for the product. It's probably easiest to find me on the social media channel, Andrew Hoit on IG or Andrew Hoit on Facebook. But we've got our Milestar Jeep groups as well on Facebook. So I'm there frequently, so easy to find.
Excellent. Well, for all of our listeners out there, you can find us at ModernJeeper.com. You can follow and see the show notes at ModernJeeperShow.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, become a subscriber, and tell us you like us, and give us some comments, because we read every comment and we will reply to every comment. And if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast player, like it, share it, give us a rating, because there's a lot of you listeners and we want your ratings. We want your feedback. We want to know what to do more of. And if we should have asked these guys a question that we didn't ask them, well, send it to us, because we'll send out an email and let you know the answer. Otherwise, this is it. This is the last show of the year. And for all of you out there, this has been an incredible year. It's been an incredible run for us. And we've done a lot with Modern Jeeper this year and had to do a lot of adaptation you heard about today. But we will be doing more and more next year. Corey has got all kinds of stuff lined up, and hopefully we get more chance to do more of these shows and bring this roundtable back for more discussions. And maybe we can do some interactive stuff. In fact, Rick, be happy to do some crossbreeding, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we could. That'd be great.
Milestar is always a great big supporter. In fact, we have the calendar will be released beginning of next week, and Milestar has got a big presence in that calendar for the Modern Jeeper calendar. And of course, we'll send some out to Larry just so you can have them on your calendar and give them away to your first customers of 2021. With that, anything else you want to add, my friend Corey?
No, I think we're good. Matson's been drinking this whole time. Yeah, it's all good.
This is good. This is good stuff right here.
What we got, Matson? What is it? Beer?
Yeah. No,
It's
honestly,
coffee.
it's just coffee, but my coffee's good stuff, let me tell you.
Goodbye 2020 is all I have.
Goodbye 2020.
Cheers.
Absolutely.
The year of vision and clarity is now in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Thank you again for being a
Happy
part
New
of this
Year.
great
Happy
show.
New Year,
Happy New
guys.
Year. See you guys.